Stranger Things is one of the greatest shows ever made, but the more you watch it and rewatch it, the more you start noticing things that just don't add up. Rules that get broken, characters that vanish without explanation, timelines that contradict themselves, moments where the show tells you one thing and then does the complete opposite 2 seasons later. And now that the show is completely over, all 5 seasons done, there are no more answers coming. So today we're going through the biggest plot holes in Stranger Things, the ones that fans have been arguing about for years, the ones that were never fixed and never will be. Let's be clear about something before we start. Pointing out plot holes doesn't mean a show is bad. Stranger Things is brilliant. It's one of the most creative, emotional, and genuinely scary shows in TV history. But it also ran for 9 years across 5 seasons, had dozens of writers, introduced massive amounts of lore, and some things just didn't hold together under the weight of all that. Some of these holes were created when the writers came up with a cool new idea and didn't check if it fit with what they'd already established. Some were things the show promised to explain and then never did, and some are questions that fans have been waiting on since season 1, that the finale just quietly walked past without addressing. Let's get into them. Everything in this video is pulled directly from the show itself, all 5 seasons, cross-referenced with the official Stranger Things wiki, fan breakdowns, and confirmed lore. We're not making things up or being unfair to the writers. These are genuine inconsistencies that even die-hard fans have been debating for years. Alright, plot hole number 1. The coolest reveal in season 4 accidentally broke one of the best scenes in season 1. This one is the big one, and it's the plot hole that has been discussed more than any other in the entire fandom. In season 4, Nancy gets trapped in the upside-down version of her bedroom and makes a major discovery. She checks her diary and realizes the last entry is dated November 6, 1983, the exact day Will Byers disappeared and 11 opened the gate. The Upside Down was stuck in time from that moment. It's a great reveal. It explains a lot about why the Upside Down looks the way it does, and it's used as a clever plot device. Nancy can't find the guns she stashed in her room after season 2, because in the frozen 1983 version of her room, those guns don't exist yet. But here's the problem. Go back to season 1. One of the most iconic and emotional scenes in the entire show is Joyce painting the alphabet on her wall and hanging up Christmas lights so Will can communicate with her from the Upside Down. The Upside Down was established to be a physical snapshot of Hawkins frozen on November 6, 1983, meaning the version of the house in that dimension stopped updating the day Will was taken. But Joyce did not purchase the Christmas lights or paint the alphabet on her wall until several days after her son disappeared. Because these items were not part of the environment when the snapshot occurred, they should not exist in the version of the house where Will was hiding. In other words, Will should have been standing in a completely dark room, with no letters, no lights, nothing. Now, some fans have offered explanations. The theory is that Will didn't actually see the lights. He sensed the energy they were producing and could feel where they were through the wall. Sound and energy can travel between dimensions even if physical objects can't. That's how he knew what Joyce was spelling out. And that explanation actually makes a kind of sense. But here's the thing, the frozen timeline reveal in season 4 directly contradicts the original premise of season 1 Elite Daily. And the show never directly addressed the contradiction on screen. The writers introduced a cool new rule without going back to check if it fit with what they'd already shown us. The Christmas light scene is still beautiful, but if you watch it now knowing the frozen in 1983 rule, it doesn't work the way the show presented it. The most powerful person in the show kept losing her abilities whenever the plot needed her to. Let's talk about Eleven's powers, because across 5 seasons, the rules around what she can and can't do were all over the place. In season 1, Eleven was terrifyingly powerful. She flipped a van with her mind, closed a gate between dimensions, and destroyed a Demogorgon, all before disappearing into the Upside Down herself. In season 2, she closed the full gate at Hawkins Lab, a massive feat that left her face covered in blood and collapsed her entirely. The show made it clear. Using enormous power comes at a cost. In season 3, she fights the Mind Flayer, gets bitten, and after her friends remove the piece of the creature embedded in her leg, she realizes she can no longer use her powers. They're just gone. Slash film. And they stay gone for all of season 4, volume 1. Here's where fans started asking questions. In season 1, Eleven demonstrated her powers casually from day 1. Flipping things, reading minds, making contact with other dimensions, without any of this trauma-based weakness. But by season 4, the explanation for losing her powers is wrapped up in psychological trauma and emotional blocks. In a flashback in Season 4, fans notice that young Eleven is shown interacting with Henry Creel and Dr. Brenner, speaking in full sentences, far more fluently than she did in Season 1, even though Season 1 takes place years after those memories. She could speak better in the past than in the present. The show never explains how she went from being articulate to barely forming words. And then there's the bigger issue. Kaylee, Eleven's sister, number 8, was introduced in a whole Season 2 subplot and then completely disappeared. She wasn't mentioned again in Season 3, not in Season 4, not in Season 5, except for a small role in the finale. For years, fans kept waiting for her to come back and help fight Vecna, given she also had psychic powers. It felt like she was being set up as a major player. She wasn't. The rules around Eleven's powers were never nailed down clearly enough. She'd be virtually unstoppable in one scene and completely helpless in the next, and the show's explanations for why were inconsistent at best. How did Russia get a Demogorgon? The show never actually answered this. The Season 3 ending set up one of the most tantalizing mysteries in the whole show. Hopper seemingly sacrifices himself in the explosion at Starcourt Mall, and then, in a post-credits scene set in Russia, we see guards walking past a prison cell, and one says to another, "Not the American." That line sent the entire fandom into a spiral. Who is the American? Is it Hopper? Season 4 confirms yes. Hopper survived the explosion and was captured by the Russians, but Hopper's survival was never cleanly explained. The machine at Starcourt Mall was directly responsible for the explosion. Russian soldiers who were standing next to the same machine are shown as completely disintegrated, nothing left but ash. Yet Hopper, who was right there, somehow survived with zero explanation. The show basically just asked audiences to accept it and move on. The bigger problem is the Demogorgon. Hopper is right to believe the presence of a healthy Demogorgon in Russia should be impossible. He correctly deduces this means 11 isn't safe. All creatures in the Upside Down are bound together in a hive mind connected to the Mind Flayer, and the closing of the Starcourt Gate should have killed the creature when it was cut off. The show tries to explain this away by suggesting a piece of the Mind Flayer was also being held captive in Russia, keeping the Demogorgon connected to the hive mind. But that explanation raises its own questions. Even the spider monster from Season 3, which was actually part of the Mind Flayer, wasn't strong enough to survive when the Starcourt Gate closed. CBR. So why would this Demogorgon be any different? The Russia storyline was exciting. David Harbour was fantastic, but it introduced a Demogorgon that broke the rules the show had already established, and the fix the writers offered didn't fully hold up. The show treated the death of a beloved character like a footnote, and the Demogorgon had very selective hunting habits. Let's talk about Barb. Barbara Holland was Nancy's best friend. She was taken by the Demogorgon in Season 1, dragged into the Upside Down while sitting alone by a pool at Steve's party. She had a small cut on her hand that bled into the water. She screamed, and then she was gone. Fans loved Barb. The response to her death was enormous. People were furious that she was killed off so quickly and with so little ceremony, and the show seemed to acknowledge this backlash because in Season 2, Nancy spends time trying to get justice for Barb and expose what really happened to her. But here's the issue that never got addressed. Why Barb? The Demogorgon was drawn to blood. That's the established rule. Barb had a small cut, but people in Hawkins were bleeding all the time. Kids scraped their knees. People got into fights. There were teenagers at a pool party. The show never explained why the Demogorgon zeroed in on Barb specifically, when there were presumably dozens of other people in Hawkins with cuts and scrapes on any given week. And then there's the broader Season 1 problem. The Demogorgon had been active long enough that Hawkins Lab had noticed. Will had been taken. Barb was taken. But beyond that, nobody else in Hawkins seemed to have gone missing or been attacked before the events of the show. For a creature that hunts on blood and instinct, it was remarkably restrained. When Will comes back from the Upside Down, he survives a week there, breathing toxic air, eating slugs, hiding from the Demogorgon. Barb, meanwhile, is dead within hours. The show never explained what made Will so much more survivable in those conditions. He was just tougher, apparently. The show never fully addressed it. The show's most important reveal came in the final season, and it created more questions than it answered. By the time Season 5 arrived, fans had one major remaining question. How did Henry Creel really become Vecna? We knew the surface story, lab experiments, 11 throwing him through a gate, the Upside Down transforming him. But the finale went deeper. In the final season, we learned that as a child, Henry stumbled upon a wounded man in an abandoned mineshaft. He was forced to kill the man in self-defense, and inside the man's briefcase was a mysterious stone, an object that created a direct bridge between Henry and the Mind Flayer. It's this connection that corrupted him and ultimately set him on the path to becoming Vecna. While the stone fills in some gaps in Henry Creel's origin story, it creates a series of other questions that go completely unanswered in the finale. The show never reveals where the stone came from or why the man was carrying it. Who was that man? How did he get a stone that connects to the Mind Flayer? A creature from another dimension? Had other people encountered it? Had the government known about this? These aren't small questions. The stone is literally the reason Vecna exists. It's the source of everything. And the show just dropped it in the finale without any backstory. The fate of the Abyss itself was also never addressed after the UpsideDown was destroyed. Since Earth was unaffected by the blast, it seems safe to assume the Abyss remains untouched. But there are still endless questions about that dimension that were never answered. There may be worse things than the Mind Flayer lurking in it. The Mind Flayer's particles are still confirmed to exist in the Abyss at the end of the show. The UpsideDown was destroyed, but the source of all the evil, the dimension it came from, still there, still unexplained, still potentially dangerous. For a show that was building its mythology for 9 years, the decision to introduce Vecna's true origin stone in the final episode and then refuse to explain it felt like one of the biggest missed opportunities in the series. And those are the biggest plot holes in Stranger Things. 5 massive issues across all 5 seasons that were either never addressed, contradicted the show's own rules, or were set up and then quietly abandoned. Now look, none of these ruin the show. Stranger Things is still one of the most rewatchable, emotionally gripping series Netflix has ever made. But now that it's over and there are no more answers coming, these holes are just going to stay open forever. Drop a comment below. Which one bothered you the most? Personally, the UpsideDown frozen timeline breaking the Christmas lights scene is the one I can't get past, because that scene is so good, and now every time I watch it, I notice the problem. If you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe and hit the bell. We've got more deep dives, full character breakdowns, and ranked lists from Stranger Things coming soon. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.